The dust rolled across the Dawson ranch like a living thing that day, curling around the boots of the men unloading hay. It was the kind of heat that made men mean and horses nervous. No one paid much attention when the widow arrived, just another tired soul looking for work. Her name was Clara, and her black dress was faded to gray, her hands trembling as she clutched a torn letter of reference. "Just need someone to clean the barn," the foreman grunted. "No talking, no crying, no asking favors." Clara nodded. She didn't cry anymore, not since the fever took her husband and baby in the same week. The rancher, Luke Dawson, was away in town that morning. Folks said he'd changed since his wife died 2 years back. Used to laugh louder than thunder. Now he spoke to no one but his twin children, Ella and Eli. Even they barely saw him between cattle drives and whiskey deals. When Clara was shown to the barn, she felt the weight of silence around her. It was more than dust and hay, it was sorrow soaked into the wood. She began sweeping, careful and quiet, moving like a ghost. But as the day stretched on, she heard a faint sound. A giggle, then another. 2 small faces peeked from behind a stack of hay bales, golden-haired, dirt-streaked, and full of mischief. "You're not supposed to be here," Clara whispered. "We live here," said the little boy proudly. "I'm Eli. She's Ella, your father." "Papa doesn't care," Ella said softly. "He's always mad." Something twisted inside Clara's chest. She had seen that look before, in her own mirror, after the fever. So she said nothing more and let them sit with her while she worked. They talked about horses and clouds, about how their mama used to braid Ella's hair with wildflowers. Clara listened, smiling through a pain she didn't name. By evening, when the foreman passed by, the twins had already scurried off. Clara was told to sleep in the small storage room behind the barn. She thanked him, though he didn't hear. The next day, Luke Dawson returned. He was a hard man with eyes like a storm and a scar running across his jaw, a reminder of a cattle rustler who hadn't lived to brag about it. When the foreman mentioned the new worker, Luke barely nodded. "Just make sure she keeps to her work," he muttered. But that night, as he walked past the barn to check the corral, he noticed the faint glow of a lantern. The barn door was slightly ajar. He frowned. No one should be working that late. When he stepped inside, the sight stopped him cold. There, beneath the lamplight, sat the widow, Clara, her back against a hay bale, fast asleep. And in her arms, curled up like kittens, were his twins. Ella's hand rested on Clara's shoulder. Eli's head pressed against her lap. For a long moment, Luke couldn't move. He saw something in that scene that struck deep, something he hadn't seen in years. Peace, safety, love. He took a step closer, and the floor creaked. Clara's eyes fluttered open. When she saw him, she gasped and tried to rise, but his voice stopped her. "Don't." He wasn't angry. He was lost. "I found them wandering," she whispered quickly. "They were scared of the thunder." "I didn't mean," but Luke shook his head. "They never come out here at night," he said, almost to himself. "Not since their mother died." Silence filled the barn. Outside, the wind howled through the open plains. Clara lowered her gaze. "They just needed to feel safe, sir. That's all." Luke stared at the 3 of them for a long time. Then, without a word, he turned and left. The next morning, everyone expected the widow to be gone. But instead, Luke sent word through the foreman, "Keep her on." From that day, Clara worked inside the ranch house. She cooked breakfast, mended shirts, and sometimes read stories too. The twins before bed, Luke rarely spoke, but he watched. Quietly, carefully, he saw how his children smiled again, how laughter began to return to the old house like light through cracked shutters. But the town didn't stay quiet for long. Rumors spread like wildfire. They said the widow had bewitched the rancher, that she was using his grief for shelter. One evening, as Luke rode home from town, 2 ranch hands stopped him at the gate. "You can't let that woman stay," one said. "She's a curse, boss. She'll take what's yours." Luke's eyes turned cold. "You boys forget yourselves. She's trouble," the other spat. "You'll see." Luke dismounted slowly. "No," he said, voice low. "What I see is that you talk too much about things that ain't your business." The men fell silent. Luke rode on. When he entered the house, he found Clara in the parlor, mending a toy horse with needle and thread. The twins were asleep upstairs. The lamplight softened her face, and for a moment, he saw the ghost of something he'd buried deep, hope. He spoke quietly. "You didn't come here just for work, did you?" She looked up, startled. "Sir, there's more behind your eyes than cleaning barns." Tears glimmered. "I came because I had nowhere else," she said. "Because I thought maybe the Lord hadn't forgotten me yet." Luke stepped closer, his voice rough. "Maybe he hasn't." The next morning, the ranch hands watched as the twins ran out of the house, laughing, their father following behind, something no one had seen in years. Clara stood on the porch, her eyes soft as sunrise. By sundown, everyone on Dawson Ranch knew the truth. The widow wasn't hired help anymore. She was the reason the rancher's heart had started to beat again. And sometimes, when the night came down over the plains and thunder rolled in the distance, Luke Dawson could be found sitting quietly by the barn, watching through the open door where, once upon a time, he'd found his children sleeping in the arms of the woman who would save them all.